On the medical action drama series Emergency, actress and songstress Julie London played RN Dixie McCall. Her character's very presence was enough to ease the troubles of her ailing patients, while at the same time soothing the viewing audience's woes as well. London played that beloved character for 126 episodes. Previously, her career saw her play an eclectic range of roles that garnered her quite a bit of acclaim. She also had a pretty prolific career as a singer, belting out sultry songs before making it big in Hollywood. Many people remember her best for this facet of her career, as she released a total of 30 or so albums throughout her life. During World War II, she also had a brief, albeit successful, career as a model and pinup star. She was a Jane of all trades, who got to work alongside legends of the silver screen like Robert Mitchum, Rock Hudson, and Gary Cooper. But what became of her after Emergency ended? Join FactsVerse as we take a look at why Julie London's career all but ended after her stint on television. Julie London's early years. Born Nancy Gale Peck on September 26, 1926, she was the daughter of two vaudevillian performers and developed a love for singing from an early age. Her career was launched after a chance encounter with Henry Waxman, a photographer who worked for Esquire magazine, while she was working as a shop clerk at a menswear store. Waxman did a photo shoot with 17-year-old London while she was draped with a soaking wet sheet. The provocative image was published in the November 1943 issue of the magazine, and just like that, London had gotten noticed. As with the case with many other young women who appeared in the pages of Esquire back then, London became a popular pinup girl for the troops serving in WW2. Still a teenager, London's acting career was launched in 1944 when she appeared in the film Nabonga, a movie that, like the much more popular and remembered movie King Kong, was about a giant gorilla. London married twice. When London was 15, she met Jack Webb in a nightclub. She eventually married Webb, who was then a prominent radio personality. The two tied the knot in 1947, and London subsequently quit her acting career to be a full-time wife and mother of Webb's children. The couple divorced in 1953. Just 6 months after that, London met Bobby Troup, a songwriter famous for his hit song Route 66. She and Troup married in 1959. London's singing career. Opposite Rock Hudson, London appeared in several films, including The Fat Man, but more frequently on television shows. But even though she was a successful actress already, she was mostly known as a singer in the 1950s and 60s. She was well known for her sultry voice and released somewhere in the ballpark of 30 albums. Her first album, Her Name is Julie, featured the hit song Cry Me a River, which was originally written by Arthur Hamilton for Ella Fitzgerald. When London was offered the song, she turned it into a top 10 hit, and it became the best-known song of her career. Billboard named London their most popular female singer for several years in a row, and she ultimately got her own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The Julie London Dilemma. Although she was known for her sexy, alluring voice, London also had a beautiful face and gorgeous figure. She had the whole package, and producers at Liberty wanted to make full use of her looks on her album covers. In fact, in retrospect, London attributed much of her success as an actress to her fame as a singer. But even though she had all the factors going for her that should have allowed her to pursue her acting career even further, London eventually found it difficult to find roles that would suit her. It's speculated that Julie's sultry voice might just have been what was behind her career decline. The AP summed up her career troubles amusingly in 1961 when they ran an article titled The Julie London Dilemma: She Sounds Too Sexy. The world was far too focused on her looks, so much so they proved to be too distracting. The liner notes in her albums even indicated as much. For example, the notes for her album Calendar Girl read that it was no wonder why her voice came out so well, considering where it had been. One Liberty exec was quoted in that AP article as saying London was the only singer he knew of who could sell albums to men who didn't even own turntables. In 1969, she released her final album, Yummy Yummy Yummy. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to FactsVerse if you haven't already. And stick around for more about Julie London's career. London was always her own harshest critic. Singer and actress Julie London always portrayed herself as confident when performing on stage and screen. But in truth, she was always a bit skeptical of her abilities. Even so, she was a master of her craft. Take her single Cry Me a River, for example. After Barney Kessel's fantastic guitar lead intro, every second of that track was perfected by London's flawless delivery. Singers will often spend their entire lives trying to achieve what London was able to accomplish in that song seemingly effortlessly. But despite the fact she was applauded so heavily for her singing chops, she still criticized it heavily. She told one reporter when she was 29 that the only reason she sang so sexy and low was because she simply couldn't sing any higher. Her success was achieved through a series of accidents. Much of Julie's career successes came about by sheer happenstance. Take, for example, that chance encounter with a photographer when she was still a teen. If she wasn't working as a clerk at the time, she never would have gotten noticed. Her film roles weren't always the best. Many of the plots of those early movies were pretty predictable and formulaic, but London still managed to shine in them. Because of her charm, she remained in a favorable light with the viewing public and stayed relevant. If she hadn't been so memorable, she would likely have been forgotten about already by the time Jack Webb was casting his 1970s drama series Emergency. But that's another instance where luck suited her. Having previously been married to Webb, London already had an in that proved to be exactly what her career needed at the time to stay afloat. After her and Webb's marriage had ended in the 50s, London turned to music as a way to cope with her tangled web of feelings. That was before she had discovered she was gifted with a powerful singing voice, so she was merely listening to music at the time. In 1954, she had another chance encounter that changed her life. That's when she ran into Bobby Troup at a nightclub. If she hadn't been there that evening, she would never have been recognized for her talents, nor would she have met the man who became her second husband. Emergency provided London with the revival her career needed. London and Jack Webb remained on good terms even after their marriage ended. This amicable post-marriage relationship led him to casting London in Emergency in 1972. The series was a huge success and ran for 7 years. Emergency was set in the same TV universe as Webb's other hit shows, Adam 12 and Dragnet, and in it, London played registered nurse Dixie McCall. To prepare for the role, she studied medical terminology to come off as authentic. London left Hollywood behind in her early 50s. London stepped out of the spotlight and left show business behind after Emergency wrapped up in 1979. The last song she ever released as a singer was a cover of the song My Funny Valentine, which was included on the soundtrack of the 1981 Burt Reynolds film Sharky's Machine. Despite her public persona, she spent the majority of her later life outside the limelight, withdrawn and introverted. She rarely gave interviews and refused to talk about her personal life. In 1995, London, who had been a heavy smoker for her whole life, suffered a stroke. While she survived, her health continued to deteriorate until she finally died of heart failure on October 18, 2000. She was cremated, and her ashes were buried next to Bobby Troup's in the Courts of Remembrance Columbarium of Providence at the Forest Lawn Hollywood Hills Cemetery in L.A. Since her death, her songs have been covered by numerous recording stars. She's been cited as an influence by contemporary artists like Lana Del Rey. Her albums Around Midnight and Julie at Home have both been included in the book 1,000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you remember Julie London best as a singer or as an actress? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to FactsVerse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.